right. Dear Dev, I'm writing to you today to let you know that you did it. You finally went and became a pro wrestler. And I know you're thinking, well, duh, we've always wanted to do that. That was always the plan. The thing is, it didn't always seem that way. There were times where that dream almost slipped away, and I want to let you know what we did to make this dream a reality. We'll start with your junior year of high school. Perry High School reached out that summer to let you know that you were in a position to graduate early. It would take early and late classes as well as Saturday school, but we decided to go for it. The plan was to graduate right after turning 17 and take a year to focus solely on training for the Storm Wrestling Academy up in Calgary, Alberta, Canada. We worked our ass off in school and in wrestling, and the deal was that after Storms you would go and get your bachelor's while working shows on the weekends. We did so well that we ended up getting a scholarship to Northern Arizona University. Sounds awesome, right? Shortly before graduating, we got our first job at Harkins Theaters, where you met some absolutely amazing people. This is important because after a long, grueling school year, you would have nothing to do except work and celebrate that summer. We met our first girlfriend and started to party. We never drank or did drugs, but we had a lot of fun and made some really cool memories. Everything was going so well until it was time to talk school. That scholarship we earned, it required us to start that semester, which was not the plan. And this is where the vision of mom and dad had collided with ours. Looking back, I'm sure we could have worked something out, but we were still young, not confident, and we hadn't learned how to regulate our very strong emotions. You were also still a minor, and mom and dad decided you were going to NAU and delaying Storms until after that first school year. They hadn't been together since we were young, so this dynamic of all three of us fighting was very new to us. Pops was very supportive, but it still made things extremely messy. That, a new relationship, and having to go to school 2.5 hours away led us to one of the darkest times of our lives. We were 17 years old, angry at the world, navigating uncomfortable family dynamics, in a fresh, young love relationship, and alone 2+ hours away from home. We never went to class, we stopped working out, we stopped eating. Now the parties involved drinking, and you were sneaking down to the valley every chance you had. We lost 20 pounds, and I'll never forget the day we realized we were not the same person. Dad and our stepmom, Donna, knocked on the door one day, and they surprised you at your dorm. It turned out it was essentially a wellness check, and after a long, uncomfortable talk, they asked the question that will be burned into our brains forever. What drugs are you on? They weren't mad. They were concerned. And at first, we were so angry that they would assume that. We had never done drugs. But now, as a man, I empathize with them. And mom. And same with Pops. They had seen their hardworking, ambitious, full of life kid start to lose sight of everything. The strong light had faded entirely from our eyes. Pops was fighting for them to just let me pursue wrestling, and they wanted what they thought was best. And I let all of them down simultaneously. So after some long and uncomfortable conversations and fights, the call was made that we would drop out and move in with Dad until I was 18. I would work, help around the house, and put together a plan for getting my education. Then I'd prepare for the Storm Wrestling Academy. We struggled living with Dad and Donna because they had 3 very young boys and they had never had to full-time parent a 17-year-old before. And we were no help because we were angry, depressed, and embarrassed at how bad we had failed. It led to a lot of fights and what would be our only regret in life so far. We moved out literally at midnight on our 18th birthday. And although moving in with Pops was the right call to give everyone a break from this tension, we could have done it in a way more mature fashion. Our dad and Donna did nothing but try to help, and they did not deserve that. It would be a while before we talked to both of them. The next 5 months, we would work really hard and shove down all those emotions because all we had to do was make it to Storms, right? We finally arrived in Calgary in 2016, September to be exact, ready to take on the world. Or so we thought. This would be the first time our inability to regulate our emotions would drastically change our lives. When we were 6 weeks into training and still depressed, we realized that wrestling wasn't enough to save us. And that hit so hard. It scared us. And it was then that we decided we would get through the rest of the session and then leave wrestling in the rear view. We would wake up, train, maybe go to the gym, and go back to where we were staying and lock ourselves in that dark bedroom every single day. I remember our roommate Scott trying to knock to check on us and see if we wanted to go out and do something. And I would just pretend I was asleep. We also made every excuse possible to avoid hanging out with all the other students. The only time we did was Thanksgiving, and it was actually a great time. After the session, we left Calgary in December. A Storm Wrestling graduate, everything you had ever dreamed of. We had also convinced ourselves that wrestling just wasn't for us. And when we got back home, we told everyone it just wasn't what we thought. And I realized I didn't want to do it. Then all those emotions that you were burying got worse. There was no light to work towards. We broke up with our girlfriend and self-isolated even more. We moved in with our best friends, and around them, you would act fine until you couldn't anymore. We tried to go back to school, but every time we struggled, we convinced ourselves that we're too stupid and a failure, and we would just drop out again. One night, we got drunk alone and ended up exploring that dark side of our brain. When we woke up the next day, we decided we needed help. I'll never forget. We sat down our friends in that living room and told them, I'm suicidal and I don't know what to do. They took care of us and they encouraged us to open up to our parents. So we did. We sat down with all 3 branches of the family, Mom, Dad and Donna, and Pops. And even though we had been a complete failure, they were there for us and they helped us find treatment. We'd go on to try several therapists, psychologists, and psychiatrists, and nothing really stuck. Different meds and methods. Eventually, we decided to become a personal trainer and work towards the dream of running a gym. Now that we had some sort of vision, things would start to get better. We had some sort of purpose. We actually became a manager at that Harkins. We started making new friends, and we ended up in another relationship. With all of this change, we start to party again. We start to go out. Everything is going great, but ultimately, something you'll learn eventually is running from our problems will never get rid of them. Those emotions are never dealt with, and they start to fester again. We start to lose the light and become complacent. We get fired from Harkins, and we end up having to bounce at a club work at a candy store, and drive Lyft to make ends meet. And it was around this time that your girlfriend saw an email from a film school that you had asked information about. The dream of creating films had entered our minds, but you didn't want to tell anyone because you had failed so many times before. She was so impressed and even told my mom that I had reached out to a school. And that's when I realized how far we had fallen. The kid who graduated early, earned a scholarship, and chased a huge dream had now become such a deadbeat that filling out an online form was worth celebration. That gave us the motivation to finally get our certification and go on to become a personal trainer. We quit the candy store job and started training at LA Fitness and working at a youth gymnastics gym, coaching Ninja Warrior gymnastics and trampoline and tumbling. This is where we realized we had a gift for coaching and leading. Right as we started to get some momentum going, this virus popped up and shut down the entire world. We had to stop training and coaching, but we tried our best to stay active and keep the momentum going because we know what happens when we're left with our own thoughts. Then we saw an ad for WrestleMania and decided, why not? I have nothing else to do. I might as well watch that. That's when you saw the Firefly Funhouse match, and our entire world changed. As we got older and fell into film, specifically horror movies, this match showed you how amazing wrestling can be. There really is no limit to what you can create. We sat down with our girlfriend at the time and decided to give wrestling one more shot. You explained how hard it would be for her to be a partner with you pursuing this, but she gave you the blessing and she was totally on board and supportive. But I made her promise not to tell anyone. I didn't think we could handle failing again and letting everyone else down. So from April of 2020 to January of 2021, we trained to re-enter pro wrestling training. One of your clients at the time, Lydia, actually had a brother, Dallas, and he trained at the Arizona Pro Wrestling Training Center. That was about 25 minutes from where we lived at the time. You reached out and they brought you in for an interview. That's where you met Dom Vitale and John Wolfgang, two men who would drastically change your life. During the interview, you felt something that you hadn't felt in a very, very long time. We felt excitement. We felt like we were actually in the right place for once. They invited you to the tryout, and that's where you meet two gentlemen by the names of Kevin and Klaas. Stick with them. They'll help you out. You dive headfirst into training in February 2021, and then in August, you're put into a battle royal. That's when we finally decide to tell Mom, Dad, and Donna about what's been going on. We didn't tell Pops, though. I can't even tell you why, but we weren't talking at the time. So the one guy who stood by you and supported the dream when nobody else did, didn't know. In that battle royal, your family and your girlfriend get to see you in the ring, and you finally have something that you can be proud of. That's where you truly get bitten by the bug. After that, it's an obsession, as the next show is in October. We really wanted to debut and make that one special. Through these months of training, Kevin becomes your brother and your training partner. You also get taken under the wing of Klaas. He'd go on to become our big brother that we never had. He took us on the road for the first time just to see what it's like. On those long drives and long talks, you guys start to bond. So now you're traveling, you're training, and you're gearing up for a debut. Everything's perfect. Well, we're stubborn, and those problems we keep running away from just keep coming back up. Due to spending so much time devoted to wrestling, you start to become a less present friend, more absent brother and son, as well as being a distant partner. They're all supportive of you, so you don't think anything of it. Then you start realizing that as soon as you leave the wrestling school, you're depressed until you go back. But it's okay because we have a goal now, right? We start to dismiss the signs of depression because we have a purpose. Signs in the relationship show it's not going great, but we ignore those too because we just have to make it to where we get steady in wrestling. We stop hanging out with our friends because we only want to be around wrestling. And as much as your social life suffers, we reap the rewards of progress in wrestling. That takes us to the beginning of October. The show is 15 days away, and we're itching for a spot. One day before class, Dom says he has an announcement for everyone. That's where he announces that we are going to be in singles action against class on October 15th. We truly didn't believe we deserved that spot, but we are so excited we get to debut against our big bro. To everyone else, he was an undefeated prospect who looked the part. He was a clinical psychologist in real life. He's a bona fide star. But to us, he was our mentor and big brother. The next day, you were so excited to tell your girlfriend. When you told her, she laughed. She laughed and said, "You versus class? Is this going to be like one of those AEW dark matches where it's 30 seconds? That feeling we had when we heard that will never go away. We felt like such a joke, and it was the first time you realized that maybe the relationship wasn't in a good place. But like you do with everything else, you brushed it off and moved forward. There's work to do. You told Dad, Donna, and Mom, and they were so excited they were going to be there. You didn't feel that excitement, though. As a matter of fact, the closer we got to the show, the more numb we felt. There was one last thing that had to be done. In order to be on the show, I had to wrestle Dom for an hour, the Power Hour. That was scheduled for Friday, the week before the show. The weekend before that, you decided to have a relaxing weekend with your girlfriend to try and get back on the same page. It seemed to have worked, and you went into the week talking about moving in together. Then Thursday happened. She texted you saying she was going to California with a coworker. No real explanation, no idea who, and she was already on the road with them. This right here is why we don't run from problems anymore. This moment, everything we had been pushing down boiled over. Every insecurity, doubt, and vulnerability that had built up over the past 5 years had flooded our brain. We didn't sleep that night, and the next day we made it to Power Hour a zombie. As soon as you were in that ring, though, it all faded. And I believe this is when you officially met wrestler Devin. That's the version of us who is invincible. That side of us can't be hurt by anything. He's intense, he's passionate, and he leaves everything out there. That hour flew by, and we had done it. We passed. The issue with that side of us is he's only around when we're at a show or in the ring. Only when the red light's on. The moment we get back in our car, reality sets in. We sat in that parking lot and thought about how much of a loser we were. How stupid we were to think good things could happen to us. And this would be what I recognize now as a spiral. Don't worry. We're good at handling these now because we had to work really, really hard to be able to. The reason we worked so hard is because the spiral this weekend forced our hand. The next day, we spiraled out of control. She blocked our phone number, and in hindsight, as much as I disagree with how she went about this, I understand. For years, I was a deadbeat. And as soon as I found a passion, I became more and more of an absent partner. Now, as a man, I understand this. But that weekend, I had built my own reality, and it was a dark one. Sunday, October 10th, 2021. The spiral led the way. We woke up, we left our phone and a letter on our desk in our room. We didn't tell the boys where we were going. We drove up to Payson and checked into a hotel room with a ton of liquor and a plan. Thank God we don't remember much that night. We just remember the feeling we had right before we black out. The most important part, though, is we woke up. We looked around at that hotel room. It was a mess, but something on the ground had caught our eye. It was the flyer we had in the bag for the show that weekend. And that's when we decided we can't let Dom and class down. We have to at least make it to them. We drove back down to the valley, picked up and dropped off tickets and that flyer for the show at Pops' house. He deserved to at least see you wrestle before you call it. Then you went to training that night and asked Dom if you could talk in the office. You laid out everything that had happened that weekend. And you said, if I'm not here, I'm not okay. So can I please be here every night? He said, absolutely. And that was the night that school became your home. That garage in Mesa would be our home for the next 4 years. I wish I could tell you more about that week, but I honestly don't remember much. I just remember show day. We have a moment right before going out. We looked in the mirror, we saw ourselves, all geared up and ready to go. Cut up denim jacket, white and purple tights that were too big, and those voices and thoughts in our head that had taken over started to remind us of how we had failed at every single thing that we had ever done. But for some reason, a wave of calm nothing overcame our brain. That's the other side taking over. We were now invincible, and nothing besides this match and that crowd mattered. The first notes of Conversations by Juice WRLD played over the speakers, and they filled the Broadway Rec Center and our mind with hope. Then the beat dropped, we hit the curtain, and the rest is history still being written. Dev, you are now a wrestler. Sincerely, Devin.
Remember the name.